Admiral Vex Thor stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Time's Eternal Glory *, watching the stars drift past the observation window. The patrol route along the former human territories had become routine over the past century. Nothing ever happened here, anymore. The humans were gone, and the Empire had claimed their abandoned worlds without resistance. Vex Thor was old enough to remember when humans still existed in known space. They had been an odd species, neither particularly strong nor exceptionally intelligent compared to other galactic races. They traded fairly, kept their treaties, and mostly stayed in their own corner of space. The Empire had barely noticed them, beyond basic diplomatic relations. Then, 100 years ago, every human in the galaxy simply vanished. It happened overnight. Every colony went silent. Every ship stopped transmitting. Every embassy emptied. The Empire sent investigation fleets, expecting to find evidence of plague, civil war, or perhaps invasion by some unknown enemy. Instead, they found empty cities with power still running, ships abandoned in perfect working order, and no bodies anywhere. It was as if humanity had simply decided to stop existing. The Imperial Senate debated for months. Some believed humans had transcended to another plane of existence. Others thought they had fled from some terrible threat. A few suspected it was an elaborate trick, though for what purpose no one could say. Eventually, the Empire declared humanity extinct and began absorbing their former territories. Empty worlds were resettled by other species. Human space stations were repurposed. Their trade routes became Imperial shipping lanes. Most citizens of the Empire had forgotten humans entirely. They were just another species that had risen and fallen in the long history of the galaxy. Vex's Thor himself rarely thought about them anymore. "Admiral, we're approaching Sector 7, his second officer reported. "Should we maintain standard patrol speed?" "Yes." "Continue as planned," Vex Thor replied, settling into his command chair. Sector 7 had once been the location of New Seattle, a human colony of nearly 10 million people. Now it was home to a small Threxian mining operation and nothing more. His communications officer suddenly straightened at her station. "Admiral, I'm picking up strange readings from the outer system. It could be a sensor malfunction." "What kind of readings?" Vex Thor asked, not particularly concerned. "Energy signatures that don't match any known Imperial technology. They're very faint, coming from the direction of the Calith Nebula." The Calith Nebula had been on the far edge of human space, a massive cloud of gas and dust that made sensor readings unreliable and navigation dangerous. No one had bothered exploring it thoroughly. There was nothing of value inside, and the risks outweighed any potential benefits. "Run a full diagnostic on the sensor array," Vex Thor ordered. "It's probably just electromagnetic interference from the nebula." "Running diagnostics now, Admiral." Vex Thor returned his attention to the status reports on his display. The patrol was scheduled to last another 3 weeks before returning to the nearest Imperial base. He was already looking forward to shore leave. Perhaps he would visit his family on his home world, or maybe just find a quiet resort somewhere and forget about empty space and dead civilizations. "Admiral!" The communications officer's voice was urgent now. "Diagnostics are complete. The sensors are functioning perfectly. The readings are real, and they're getting stronger." Vex Thor stood up from his chair and walked over to her station. "Show me." The display lit up with data streams and visual representations of energy patterns. Whatever was creating those readings was massive and moving toward them at a speed that should not be possible for anything that large. "Alert the fleet," Vex Thor commanded. "Battle stations. I want all ships ready for potential contact." The bridge erupted into controlled activity. Officers moved to combat positions. Weapon systems powered up. Shield generators hummed to life. Within minutes, the entire patrol fleet of 12 warships was in defensive formation. "Whatever it is, it's coming out of the nebula," the sensor officer reported. "Estimated time to visual contact: 2 minutes. Vex Thor felt his heart's beating faster. In 40 years of military service, he had fought pirates, put down rebellions, and defended Imperial territory against hostile species. But something about this felt different. The readings on the sensors suggested technology beyond anything the Empire possessed. "Open a broad-spectrum hailing channel," he ordered. "All known languages and protocols. Channel open, Admiral. Unknown vessel. This is Admiral Vex Thor of the Imperial Navy. You are entering Imperial space. Identify yourself immediately or you will be considered hostile." Silence filled the bridge. The seconds ticked by with agonizing slowness. 1 minute to visual contact, the sensor officer announced. The crew watched their displays in tense silence. Every weapon system was armed and ready. Vex Thor kept his expression calm, but his mind raced through tactical options. If this was a hostile force, could his fleet defeat it? Should he retreat and call for reinforcements? But retreat from what? They did not even know what they were facing. 30 seconds. The main view screen suddenly shifted, showing the space ahead of them. At first, there was nothing but stars and the dark purple glow of the nebula. Then, something emerged from the gas clouds. It was a ship, but unlike anything Vex Thor had ever seen. It was enormous. Easily 3 times the size of his flagship, with a hull that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. The design was alien, yet somehow familiar. Sharp angles and smooth curves combined in a way that suggested both beauty and deadly purpose. Strange markings covered the hull in patterns that Vex Thor's translator could not immediately recognize. "Analysis?" he demanded. "Scanning now, Admiral," the sensor officer replied, his voice shaking slightly. "The ship's power output is off the scale. Their shields are unlike anything in our database. Weapon systems. I'm detecting at least 40 different weapons arrays, all of types we don't recognize. Keep trying to hail them," Vex Thor ordered, forcing his voice to remain steady. The massive ship continued its approach, making no aggressive moves but also not responding to any communications. It simply hung there in space, dark and silent and utterly menacing. Then, finally, the communications console beeped. "Admiral, we're receiving a response, audio only. Put it through." The voice that came through the speakers was human. Vex Thor recognized the language immediately, though he had not heard it spoken in a century. The translation software kicked in after a moment's delay. "This is Captain Park Min-jun of the Human Star Confederacy Ship Times, Indomitable Asterisk. We need to talk, Admiral. Right now. Because something is coming, and none of us are ready for it." Vex Thor stared at the dark ship on his view screen, his mind struggling to process what he had just heard. Humans. After 100 years of silence, after being declared extinct, after the galaxy had moved on and forgotten them, they were back, and they were afraid of something. Vex Thor stared at the human warship on his view screen, trying to organize his thoughts. Humans were supposed to be extinct. Dead. Gone. Yet here was one of their ships, speaking to him as if 100 years of absence meant nothing. "Captain Park," Vex Thor said slowly. "Humanity disappeared from the galaxy a century ago. The Empire declared your species extinct. Where have you been?" There was a pause before the human responded. When Park spoke again, his voice was cold and tired, in a way that made Vex Thor's skin prickle. "We didn't disappear, Admiral. We withdrew. There's a difference." "Withdrew? From everything? Every world? Every station? Every ship?" "That makes no sense." "It made perfect sense when we detected what was coming." Vex Thor felt his patience wearing thin. "Explain yourself, Captain. You're in Imperial space now. These territories were absorbed legally after humanity abandoned them. If you're here to reclaim them, I'm afraid that's not possible without proper diplomatic channels." Another pause. Then Park's voice came back, harder than before. "Admiral, I don't give a damn about old colonies or territorial claims. I'm here because in approximately 4 months, something is going to hit this region of space that will make every border dispute in galactic history look like children arguing over toys. And I need you to understand that right now, before it's too late. What are you talking about? Vex Thor demanded. What's coming? What's coming? What's coming? I'm transmitting data to your ship now. Look at it. Really look at it. Then we'll talk. The sensor officer suddenly spoke up. Admiral, we're receiving a massive data package from the human ship. It's astronomical survey data, long-range sensor readings, and something else. Combat footage, I think. Put it on the main screen, Vex Thor ordered. The view screen split into multiple windows. The first showed deep space sensor readings of something moving through the void between galaxies. It was vast beyond comprehension. A swarm of objects numbering in the millions, all moving in perfect coordination toward the galaxy. The second window showed close-up images of individual objects in the swarm. They were machines of some kind, each one the size of a small moon, covered in grinding mechanical parts and strange organic-looking growths. As Vex Thor watched, one of the machines approached a planet and began to break it apart, consuming everything on the surface and leaving nothing but a dead core behind. The third window showed combat footage. Ships that looked like earlier versions of the times. Indomitable times. Fighting desperately against the machines. Weapons fire that could destroy a city barely scratched the enemy's hull. The machines adapted to every attack, changing their shields and armor in real time. The human ships fought with incredible skill and ferocity, but they were losing. Badly. What am I looking at? Vex Thor whispered. We call them the Devourers, Park replied. They came from outside our galaxy. We first detected them 107 years ago, when they consumed the Andromeda satellite galaxy. Our long-range sensors picked up the event, and we realized they were heading this way. That's impossible. Nothing could cross intergalactic space. They did. Vexes Thor's science officer was frantically working at her console. Admiral, I'm analyzing the data. The readings appear genuine. I'm cross-referencing with our own deep space observation posts. There are anomalies in the data from several posts over the past decade that match these patterns, but they were dismissed as sensor errors or natural phenomena. They weren't errors, Park said. The Devourers have a screening effect ahead of their main force. It makes them hard to detect until they're close. We only spotted them because we were specifically looking for extragalactic threats. The rest of the galaxy had no idea what to look for. Vex Thor felt cold. If what you're saying is true, why didn't you warn the Empire? Why didn't you warn anyone? We tried. 107 years ago, we sent diplomatic missions to every major power in the galaxy. We showed them the data. We explained what was coming. Do you know what they did? Vex Thor said nothing. They laughed at us. Park continued, bitterness clear in his voice. They said humans were being paranoid, that we were seeing threats where none existed. Some accused us of faking the data to gain military funding or territory. The Empire's official response was that humanity should stop wasting everyone's time with fantasy stories. Vex Thor felt a sinking feeling in his chest. He could imagine the scene. Humans, a minor species with no real power or influence, trying to convince the mighty Empire of a threat from beyond the galaxy. Yes, the Senate would have dismissed them. He probably would have dismissed them too. So we made a decision, Park said. If the galaxy wouldn't prepare, we would. We withdrew every human from known space. Every ship, every colony, every trace of our existence. We went dark, and we poured every resource, every credit, every piece of technology we had into building a fleet that could fight the Devourers. For 100 years? For 100 years. We built ships. We trained soldiers. We designed weapons specifically to counter their adaptation abilities. We turned our entire civilization into a war machine, because it was the only way we would survive. The bridge was silent. Every officer was staring at the view screen, at the images of the approaching swarm and the desperate battles. And now you're back, Vex Thor said quietly. Why now? Why not stay hidden? Because we can't win alone, Park replied. We spent a century preparing, and we have a fleet that might be able to hurt them. But there are too many. We need numbers. We need the Empire's ships, the Empire's soldiers, the Empire's resources. We need every species in the galaxy to fight together, or we all die. The Empire has the strongest military in the galaxy, Vex Thor said, hearing the defensiveness in his own voice. We've never lost a war. You've never fought anything like this. The Devourers don't negotiate. They don't retreat. They consume everything in their path and move on. Every world they take makes them stronger. Every ship they destroy, they harvest for materials. They've eaten entire galaxies, Admiral. Galaxies. And they're coming here next. Vex Thor looked at the combat footage again. He watched human ships executing maneuvers that should have been impossible, fighting with a desperation and skill that spoke of long experience. And they were still losing. What do you want from me? He asked. Take this data to your government. Show them what's coming. Convince them to work with us. We'll share everything we've learned. Our technology, our tactics, our intelligence. But you need to start preparing now. Every day wasted is thousands of lives lost later. And if the Empire refuses, then we fight alone and we all die. The Devourers don't care about politics or pride, Admiral. They just consume, and in 4 months, they'll be here whether the Empire believes in them or not. Vex Thor made his decision. Captain Park, I'm ordering my fleet to stand down from battle stations. I want you to dock with my ship. We need to discuss this in person, and then I need to contact Imperial Command immediately. Understood, Admiral. Preparing to dock. As the Time's indomitable Times moved closer, Vex Thor could see the details of its hull more clearly. The ship bore scars from countless battles. Armor had been repaired and rebuilt dozens of times. Weapon ports showed signs of heavy use. This was not a ship that had spent a century in hiding. This was a ship that had been fighting a war none of them knew existed. Officer, Vex Thor said quietly, send a priority alpha message to Imperial Command. Tell them we have first contact with humanity, and tell them we have a Category 1 extinction threat incoming. I want every Admiral and Senator to see this data within the hour. Yes, Admiral. Vex Thor continued to stare at the human warship. 100 years. They had spent 100 years preparing for this. They had given up everything. Their homes, their place in the galaxy, their very identity as a spacefaring species, all to get ready for a war that was now almost here, and the Empire had laughed at them. The Imperial Senate chamber was in chaos. 300 senators from across the galaxy shouted at each other, their translators creating a wall of noise that made thinking difficult. Vex Thor stood at attention near the speaker's platform, waiting for order to be restored. It had been 5 days since his encounter with Captain Park. 5 days of frantic communication between his fleet and Imperial Command. 5 days of scientists analyzing the data the humans had provided. And now, finally, the Senate was in emergency session to decide what to do. Order! The Senate speaker slammed her gavel down repeatedly. I will have order in this chamber. I will have order. I will have order. I will have order. In this chamber. The noise gradually died down. Senators returned to their seats, still muttering angrily to each other. We will now hear from Admiral Vex Thor, the speaker announced. Admiral, please present your report. Vex Thor stepped forward. Senators, 5 days ago my patrol fleet made contact with a human warship. As you know, humanity was declared extinct 100 years ago. They were not extinct. They withdrew from known space to prepare for an approaching threat. That threat, which they call the Devourers, will reach Imperial space in approximately 3 months and 21 days. A senator from the Karathi delegation stood up. Admiral, with respect, we've all seen the data. Our scientists confirm the readings are genuine. However, many of us question humanity's motives. They abandoned the galaxy for a century. Why should we trust them now? Because they're right, Vexthor said simply. The threat is real. Our own observation posts have detected the same anomalies. We just didn't know what we were looking at. The humans did. Another senator stood. This one, a Threxian. Even if the threat is real, why do we need humanity? The Imperial fleet is the most powerful military force in the galaxy. We can handle this ourselves. No, Senator, we cannot. Vexthor pulled up the combat footage on the chamber's main display. This is human ships fighting the Devourers. These ships are more advanced than anything in our fleet, built specifically to counter the enemy's adaptive technology. Watch closely. Watch closely. The Senate watched in silence as human warships fought desperately against the mechanical swarm. They saw weapons that could level cities, bounce off enemy shields. They saw the machines adapt to every attack, changing their defenses in real time. They saw human ships destroyed, despite fighting with incredible skill. The humans have been fighting these things for years in skirmishes along the approach vector, Vexthor continued. They've learned how to hurt them, how to slow them down, how to survive against impossible odds, and they're still barely holding on. If they can't win alone, we certainly cannot. The speaker leaned forward. Admiral, you've spoken with these humans personally. What is your assessment of their intentions? Enli. Ament. Enli. Vexthor chose his words carefully. They want to survive. They want us to survive. They're willing to share everything they've learned, all their technology and tactics, if we agree to work together. They're not interested in reclaiming territory or settling old grievances. They just want to live through what's coming. A human voice suddenly echoed through the chamber. Everyone turned. Captain Park Min-jun stood at the entrance to the chamber, flanked by two other humans. Vexthor recognized them from their brief meeting. Engineer Lee Hana and First Officer Kim Tae-yang. The humans walked forward with military precision, stopping at the designated position for addressing the Senate. Park looked different than he had over the video link. He was tall for a human, with dark hair starting to gray at the temples. His uniform was simple but practical, showing signs of wear and repair, but it was his eyes that struck Vexthor. They were the eyes of someone who had seen too much, fought too long, and lost too many people. Captain Park, the speaker said, recovering from her surprise. You were not invited to this session. I know. But I'm here anyway, because you're wasting time with debates while the clock runs down. Park's voice was respectful, but firm. Senators, I know what you're thinking. You're wondering if this is a trick. You're wondering if humans are using this threat as an excuse to gain power or reclaim territory. You're wondering if we're trustworthy after abandoning the galaxy for so long. He paused, looking around at the hundreds of faces staring at him. Let me make this simple. We don't want your territory. We don't want power. We want to survive, and we want you to survive, because if this galaxy falls, there's nowhere else to run. The Devourers have consumed everything in their path for thousands of years. They've eaten entire civilizations that were older and more advanced than any of us. And they're coming here. Next, a senator stood up angrily. You abandoned us. When humanity disappeared, we thought you were dead. We mourned. We absorbed your territories out of necessity, not greed. And now you return and demand we trust you? Park turned to face the senator directly. We didn't abandon you. We tried to warn you. 107 years ago, we sent delegations to every major government in the galaxy. We showed them the data. We begged them to prepare. And do you know what happened? The chamber was silent. The Empire called us hysterical. The Threxian Republic accused us of fabricating evidence. The Korathi Federation said we were seeing patterns in random noise. Every government dismissed us. So we made a choice. We could stay and watch the galaxy refuse to prepare, or we could disappear and use every resource we had to get ready for what was coming. We chose survival. Lihana stepped forward, her voice softer than Park's but just as intense. Do you know what we gave up? Everything. We abandoned worlds that humans had lived on for generations. We left behind art, history, culture. We destroyed anything that could lead the Devourers to our hidden bases. We turned every factory into a weapons plant, every school into a military academy, every resource into a tool for war. For 100 years, every human has lived with one purpose: prepare to fight. Kim Taeyang spoke next. We don't have families anymore. We have crew assignments. We don't have homes. We have ships and bases. We don't have hobbies or dreams or plans for the future beyond the next battle. This is what the Devourers did to us. And we hadn't even met them yet. We destroyed our own civilization to build a military force capable of fighting them. The chamber was utterly silent now. Senators who had been angry moments ago looked uncomfortable. Park spoke again, his voice carrying to every corner of the room. We're here because we can't win alone. We spent a century building the most advanced fleet humanity has ever created, and it's not enough. We need numbers. We need the resources of the Empire, the technology of the Threxians, the manufacturing capability of the Korathi, the tactical expertise of every species in the galaxy. We need all of us working together, or we all die separately. What exactly are you proposing? The speaker asked. Joint Military Command. Immediate evacuation protocols for worlds in the Devourer's path. Technology sharing. Consolidated defensive lines. And most importantly, acceptance that we're going to lose territory. We can't hold everything. The Devourers adapt to static defenses. We need to be mobile, flexible, willing to give up ground to save lives. The Threxian senator from earlier stood up again. The Empire has never retreated from anything. Park's response was cold. Then you'll die having never learned how. The chamber erupted in angry shouts. The speaker banged her gavel repeatedly. But the noise continued. Vexthor watched Park's face and saw no reaction to the chaos. The human just stood there, waiting, as if he had expected this exact response. Finally, order was restored. The speaker looked tired. Captain Park, the Senate will debate your proposal. But I must ask, if we refuse, what will you do? We'll fight anyway. We'll die anyway. But we'll take as many of those things with us as we can. And maybe we'll buy the rest of the galaxy a few extra days before the end. Park met her eyes directly. But I'm asking you not to make us do that. I'm asking you to choose survival over pride. Choose life over tradition. Choose to fight together instead of dying alone. The speaker was quiet for a long moment. The Senate will vote in 3 days. Until then, you and your people are guests of the Empire. You'll have access to our military command to begin preliminary coordination, should the vote pass. Thank you, Speaker. Park bowed slightly, then turned and walked out of the chamber with his officers. Vexthor watched them go. 3 days. The fate of the galaxy would be decided in 3 days. He just hoped it would be enough time. As the Senate erupted into debate once more, Vexthor left the chamber and followed the humans. He found them in a corridor outside, standing quietly. Captain Park, Vexthor said. That was a risky move. Addressing the Senate without permission. Park looked at him with those tired eyes. Admiral, in 3 months the Devourers will be here. I don't have time for diplomatic niceties. Either the Empire works with us, or they don't. But I needed them to understand what's at stake. Do you think the vote will pass? I don't know. I hope so. Because if it doesn't, a lot of good people are going to die for no reason except stubbornness. Vexthor nodded slowly. For what it's worth, I believe you, and I'll be recommending that the military command begins preparations immediately. Vote or no vote. Park extended his hand, a human gesture. Vexthor took it. Thank you, Admiral. That might just save us all. The Senate vote had passed by a narrow margin, barely enough to authorize joint military operations with humanity, not enough to suggest the Empire truly believed what was coming. Many senators still thought this was an elaborate scheme or an overreaction to a minor threat. Those doubts died the day the Devourers arrived. Vex Thor stood on the bridge of the Time's Eternal Glory asterisk, watching the sensor displays with growing horror. The edge of Imperial space lit up with contact alerts. Hundreds of them. Then thousands. Then too many to count. All ships, battle stations, he commanded, his voice steady despite the fear in his chest. Execute defensive formation Theta. Get those civilian transports behind our lines now. The planet below them was Telora Prime, an Imperial colony world of 8 million souls. It had factories, farms, cities full of families who had no idea they were about to become a battleground. The evacuation had begun 2 days ago, when long-range sensors first detected the approaching swarm, but there were still millions of people on the surface. Human ships are taking position on our left flank, his tactical officer reported. Vex Thor pulled up the tactical display. The Times, Indomitable Times, was there, along with 20 other human warships. It was a fraction of humanity's total fleet. But Park had insisted on spreading their forces across multiple defensive lines. The Empire had 400 ships at Telora Prime. Against what was coming, it felt like nothing. Open a channel to Captain Park, Vex Thor ordered. Park's face appeared on the screen. He looked calm, but Vex Thor could see the tension in his shoulders. This was the moment humanity had prepared for during their entire century of absence. This was what they had sacrificed everything to be ready for. Admiral, Park said. Enemy contact in 40 seconds. Remember the plan. We hit them hard and fast, then pull back to the secondary line. Don't try to hold position. The transports need time, and we buy that with movement, not stubbornness. Understood. Vex Thor wanted to argue. Wanted to say that Imperial doctrine was to hold ground and protect civilians by standing firm. But he had seen the combat footage. He had studied the tactics. He knew Park was right. Enemy in range in 10 seconds, the tactical officer announced. 9, 8, 7. Vex Thor gripped his command chair. This was it. Everything they had prepared for, everything the humans had warned them about, was about to become real. 3, 2, 1. Contact. 3, 3, 3, 3. The Devourers poured into the system like a flood of metal and rage. Each machine was the size of a frigate, covered in grinding mechanical parts and pulsing with dark energy. They moved with perfect coordination, adjusting their formation instantly to respond to the defensive fleet. All ships, open fire, Vex Thor commanded. The Imperial fleet unleashed everything they had: energy weapons, missiles, kinetic rounds. The space between the fleet and the enemy lit up with explosions and weapons fire. Dozens of Devourers were destroyed in the first salvo, but hundreds more kept coming. They're adapting to our weapons, the tactical officer shouted. Shield frequencies changing. Armor composition shifting. Our effectiveness is dropping rapidly. Active. Human ships engaging, the communications officer reported. Vex's Thor watched as the human warships moved forward with frightening speed. The Times, Indomitable Times, fired weapons that looked nothing like Imperial designs. Strange pulses of energy that seemed to bypass shields entirely. Missiles that split into dozens of submunitions mid-flight, each one targeting different points on enemy hulls. Kinetic rounds that punched through armor like paper. The Devourers tried to adapt, but the humans kept changing their attack patterns. Different weapons, different frequencies, different approaches. It was like watching a deadly dance, each side trying to outthink the other. "Sir, the enemy is breaking through on the left flank," someone shouted. "Human ships are moving to intercept," the tactical officer said. Vex Thor watched the Times, Indomitable Times, execute a maneuver that should have torn the ship apart. It spun on its axis while maintaining forward momentum, bringing its full weapons array to bear on the enemy breakthrough. The concentrated fire destroyed a dozen devourers, buying precious seconds. But the enemy was learning. They started focusing fire on human ships, recognizing them as the greater threat. One human frigate took multiple hits and exploded. Another lost shields and began venting atmosphere. "We're losing ships too fast," Vexthor said. "Order all Imperial vessels to begin fighting retreat to secondary line. Communications, signal the transports to increase speed. Admiral, there are still 4 million people on the surface," his second officer protested. "I know." Vexthor felt sick saying it. "But if we hold position, we lose the fleet, and everyone dies. Order the retreat." The Imperial fleet began pulling back, firing as they went. The Devourers pursued, relentless and unstoppable. More ships exploded. More lives ended in brief flashes of light. On the surface of Tellura Prime, ground forces were fighting desperately to hold the spaceports. The Devourers had landed dropships, smaller machines that consumed everything they touched. Imperial soldiers fought bravely, but they were being overrun. "Sir, I'm getting reports from the surface," the communications officer said, her voice shaking. "Spaceport 7 is requesting immediate assistance. They say human soldiers are holding the line there, but they're taking heavy casualties. Show me," Vexthor ordered. The screen shifted to show ground combat footage from Spaceport 7. Human soldiers in powered armor were fighting with a ferocity that shocked him. They used every weapon they had, every piece of cover, every tactical advantage. When their ammunition ran out, they used the armor itself as weapons, crushing enemy machines with superhuman strength. A human sergeant, her nameplate reading Choi Seo-yun, was coordinating the defense. Her voice came through clearly on the comm channel. "All squads, maintain firing lines. We hold until the last transport lifts. No one gets left behind." "Sergeant Choi, this is Spaceport Command," an Imperial officer's voice responded. "You need to evacuate now. The enemy is going to overrun your position." "Negative, Command. We signed up for this. Get those civilians off-world. We'll buy you the time." Vexthor watched in horror and awe as the human soldiers fought and died to protect people they had never met, from a species that had dismissed their warnings a century ago. They didn't retreat. They didn't surrender. They just fought until there was nothing left to fight with. "Last transport is away from Spaceport 7, the communications officer reported quietly. "The human squad is. They're gone." "Sir." Vexthor closed his eyes briefly. Sergeant Choi and her entire squad had died to save Imperial civilians. He made a mental note to remember her name, to make sure humanity knew what she had done. "Admiral, the enemy is breaking off," the tactical officer said suddenly. "They're focusing on the planet itself now." "What?" Vexthor looked at the tactical display. The Devourers were indeed pulling back from the fleet and descending toward Tellura Prime, in massive numbers. "Why would they do that?" Park's voice came through the comm. "Because they're not trying to destroy us, Admiral. They're trying to consume. The planet has more resources than our ships do. They'll strip it bare and use everything to build more of themselves. We can't let them take the planet. We already lost it. The question is whether we saved enough people." Park's voice was hard and bitter. "This is what fighting the Devourers means. You win by losing slower than they can advance." "Welcome to the war, Admiral." The fleet regrouped at the secondary defensive line. Vexthor watched as the remaining transports formed up behind them, packed with refugees from Tellura Prime. 4 million people had been evacuated. 4 million had been left behind. The math was brutal and simple. He opened a channel to Park's ship. "Captain, that maneuver you pulled during the breakthrough, that saved my left flank. Thank you." Park appeared on screen. He looked exhausted, and there was a cut on his forehead that no one had bothered to treat yet. "Don't thank me, Admiral. We're all in this together now." The question is whether the Empire is ready to fight this kind of war. What do you mean? I mean, we just lost a planet with 8 million people on it. We saved half. That's a victory by devourer war standards. Can your government accept victories that look like defeats? Can your soldiers accept that retreat is sometimes the only way to survive? Vex Thor looked at his own bridge crew. They looked shaken, traumatized by what they had witnessed. The Empire had not lost a major battle in 2 centuries. They had certainly never abandoned a world with millions of people still on it. They'll have to learn, he said quietly. We all will. Park nodded slowly. Then we have a chance. Not a good chance, but a chance. The main fleet is still weeks away. We have time to train, to coordinate, to learn from this battle. But Admiral, it's going to get worse before it gets better. I understand. Vex Thor straightened in his chair. Captain Park, I'm requesting that human advisors be assigned to all Imperial ships. We need to learn your tactics, your weapons, your way of fighting. Pride be damned. We need to survive. For the first time since they met, Park smiled. It was a small, tired smile, but it was genuine. Now you're thinking like someone who wants to live through this. I'll have advisors transferred to your ships within the hour. And Admiral? I'm sorry we couldn't save them all. So am I, Captain. So am I. The channel closed. Vex Thor looked at Telora Prime on his view screen, watching as the Devourers consumed the world piece by piece. Somewhere down there, Sergeant Choi Seo-yeon had died buying time for people she would never know. She and millions of others. This was the war humanity had prepared for. This was what they had tried to warn the galaxy about. And this was only the beginning. 3 months. 3 months of constant warfare, of worlds lost and populations evacuated. 3 months of Imperial forces learning to fight like humans, and humans learning to coordinate with dozens of different species. 3 months of dying slowly enough to call it winning. Vex Thor stood in the war room aboard the Mobile Command Station times Unity *, a massive facility that served as joint headquarters for the combined fleet. Around the holographic display table stood representatives from every major species in the Empire, along with Captain Park and his senior staff. The hologram showed the Nexus, a critical transportation hub that connected 5 major sectors of Imperial space. If the Devourers took the Nexus, they could split the fleet and attack from multiple directions at once. It had to be held. Intelligence estimates the main Devourer force will arrive at the Nexus in 48 hours, Park said, manipulating the display to show enemy movements. This is their largest concentration of forces yet. Everything they've consumed from dozens of worlds, all focused on one target. How many? Asked Commander Threll of the Threxian fleet. Current estimates put it at over 50,000 capital-scale units, supported by millions of smaller craft. Park, let that number sink in. It's more than we've faced before. Significantly more. The room was silent. 50,000. The combined fleet had maybe 8,000 ships, and many of those were damaged from previous engagements. We can't win a straight fight, Vex Thor said. It hurt to admit it, but 3 months of war had taught him honesty. We need something else. Agreed, Park said. He manipulated the display again, and several massive shapes appeared. These are what we've been building. Humanity's last cards. We call them Titangent-class fortress ships. Vex Thor stared at the hologram. The fortress ships were enormous, each one the size of a small moon. They bristled with weapons and were covered in armor plating that looked thick enough to shrug off anything. How many do you have? He asked. 3. It's all we could complete in time. Each one represents 60 years of construction, and every advanced technology humanity developed during our isolation. They're FTL-capable, heavily shielded, and armed with weapons designed specifically to counter Devourer adaptation protocols. 3 ships against 50,000, Commander Threll said. Even Titan ships, those are poor odds. They're not meant to win the battle alone, Park replied. They're meant to anchor our defense, while the rest of the fleet executes a multi-vector assault. The Devourers adapt to predictable attacks. We need to hit them from dozens of directions simultaneously, with different species using different tactics. Their adaptation can't keep up with that much variety. Lee Hanna stepped forward, pulling up technical schematics. We've been studying Devourer behavior for 3 months now. On top of years of skirmish data, their collective intelligence has a processing limit. If we overwhelm that limit, they default to basic defensive protocols. That's when they're vulnerable. So we need to confuse them, Vex Thor said, understanding. Threxian swarm tactics, Korathi, precision strikes, Imperial formation fighting, human adaptive warfare. All at once. Exactly, Park said, but it requires perfect coordination. If one element of the attack fails, the entire plan falls apart. And there's another problem. He pulled up a section of the Nexus structure. To execute this plan, someone needs to be inside the Nexus itself, coordinating the attack in real time. The Devourers will know this and focus everything on that position. It'll be the most dangerous place in the entire battle. I'll do it, Vex Thor said immediately. Park looked at him. Admiral, you're the commander of the Imperial fleet. We need you in overall command. And I'm telling you, I'll be in the Nexus. My people need to see that I'm willing to take the same risks I ask of them. Besides, I've learned enough about human tactics over these months. I think I can coordinate this properly, Kim Tae-yang spoke up. Then I'm going with you. You'll need someone who's been fighting these things for years. No offense, Admiral, but 3 months doesn't make you an expert. Vex Thor nodded. Several hands went up around the table. A Threxian tactical officer, a Korathi fighter squadron leader, representatives from a dozen other species. They all volunteered to go into the most dangerous position in the battle. Park looked around at them, and something in his expression softened slightly. 3 months ago, most of you didn't believe the Devourers existed. Now you're volunteering for suicide missions to stop them. Humanity spent a century alone preparing for this. I'm glad we're not alone anymore. Now. You never had to be, Vex Thor said quietly. We should have listened 100 years ago. We didn't. But we're listening now. The planning session continued for hours. Every detail was analyzed, every contingency prepared for. Finally, they had a plan that might work. It was desperate and dangerous, but it was all they had. 2 days later, the Devourers arrived at the Nexus. Vex Thor stood in the central command center of the Nexus station, surrounded by officers from a dozen species. Screens showed the approaching swarm, a dark cloud that blotted out the stars. It was the most terrifying thing he had ever seen. All ships, assume attack positions, he commanded. Remember the plan. We hit them with everything, all at once, for every world they've taken, for every person we've lost, for everyone we're trying to save. The combined fleet moved into position. The 3 Titangent-class fortress ships took point, their massive forms dwarfing everything around them. Behind them, Imperial battleships formed up in traditional defensive formations. Threxian attack swarms spread out in loose clusters. Korathi precision craft positioned themselves for surgical strikes. Human ships, dark and deadly, waited at the edges ready to exploit any opening. The Devourers began their attack. The first wave crashed against the Titan ships, and the massive fortresses proved their worth. Weapons that could shatter planets barely scratched their armor. Shields that could deflect fleet attacks held against the onslaught. The Titans fired back with weapons that tore through Devourer hulls, each shot calculated to exploit a different weakness. But the Devourers kept coming. Execute Pattern Alpha, Vex Thor commanded. All species, begin coordinated assault. The fleet exploded into action. Imperial ships charged forward in formation, their combined firepower overwhelming local Devourer defenses. The moment the enemy adapted, Threxian swarms hit from the flanks, their chaotic attack patterns confusing the collective intelligence. As the Devourers shifted to counter the swarms, Korathi precision strikes destroyed key nodes in their formation. Human ships darted in and out, changing tactics every few seconds to prevent adaptation. It was working. The Devourers' coordination was breaking down. Their adaptation protocols overwhelmed by too many different approaches at once. "They're focusing on the Nexus," Kim Tae-yang warned. "Enemy force approaching our position." Vexthor watched the sensors. A massive wave of Devourers was heading straight for the command center. "All defensive positions. Prepare to engage. We need to hold until the fleet finishes their assault." The Nexus station shook as the first enemy units struck. Defense turrets fired continuously, and small craft launched to intercept the attackers. But there were too many. "Hull breach on Deck 7, someone reported. "Enemy units boarding. Seal that section and vent it." Vexthor ordered. "All personnel. We're going to have company. Prepare for close combat." The battle became desperate. Soldiers from different species fought side by side in the corridors of the Nexus, holding back wave after wave of Devourer assault units. Vexthor himself took up a weapon and fought alongside his crew, defending the command center. In space, the fleet continued their assault. The 3 Titan ships pushed deeper into enemy formation, their weapons carving paths of destruction. Park's voice came through on all channels. "Admiral, we're breaking their formation, but you need to hold that position for 5 more minutes. Can you do it?" Vexthor looked around the command center. Half his staff was wounded. Systems were failing. The enemy was at the doors. "We'll hold," he said. The next 5 minutes felt like 5 hours. They fought for every meter, every second. A Threxian officer sacrificed himself to seal a breach. A Korathi pilot crashed her damaged fighter into an enemy assault group. Species that had barely known each other 3 months ago now died to save each other. Then, suddenly, the pressure stopped. "Admiral, enemy forces are retreating," Kim Tae-yang reported, disbelief in his voice. "They're withdrawing from the Nexus." Vexthor pulled up the tactical display with shaking hands. The Devourer swarm was breaking up, pulling back in disorder. The combined fleet had done it. They had overwhelmed the enemy's adaptation, broken their coordination, and forced a retreat. "All ships pursue and engage." Park's voice came through. "Don't give them time to regroup." The fleet chased the retreating Devourers, destroying thousands more before they could escape to deep space. When it was finally over, the sensors showed clear space around the Nexus. They had won. Vexthor collapsed into his chair, exhausted beyond measure. Kim Tae-yang sat down next to him, looking equally drained. "We did it," the human said quietly. "We actually did it." "How many did we lose?" Vexthor asked. "Too many. But not everyone. We saved the Nexus. We saved billions of people in the sectors it protects. And we proved that we can beat them." Park's ship docked with the Nexus an hour later. The human captain looked exhausted but satisfied as he entered the command center. He surveyed the damage, the wounded being treated, the mixed species crews working together to repair systems. "You held," Park said to Vexthor. "You held when it mattered most." "We all did," Vexthor replied. He gestured around at the crew. "Humans, Threxians, Korathi, every species here. We held together." Park nodded slowly. He walked to the observation window and looked out at the fleet. Ships from dozens of species floated together, damaged but victorious. Human and Imperial vessels side by side, helping each other with repairs. 100 years ago, we left because the galaxy wouldn't listen, Park said quietly. We gave up our homes, our culture, everything we were, to prepare for this war. I always wondered if it was the right choice. If we should have stayed and tried harder to convince everyone. What do you think now? Vexthor asked. I think we did what we had to do. And I think coming back, fighting alongside all of you, this is what we were preparing for. Not just to survive the Devourers, but to save the galaxy that dismissed us. Park turned to face Vex Thor. We didn't return to reclaim what we lost. We returned because this is our galaxy too. And you don't abandon your home. Even if you had to leave it for a while. Vex Thor extended his hand. The Empire was wrong to dismiss you. I was wrong to dismiss you. But we're listening now. And we're grateful you came back. Park took his hand. The war isn't over. The main Devourer fleet is still out there. But now we know we can beat them. Together. Together, Vex Thor agreed. Through the observation window, they watched as the combined fleet began its recovery operations. Human ships shared their advanced medical technology to treat Imperial wounded. Imperial logistics vessels distributed supplies to everyone who needed them. Threxian engineers worked alongside Korathi technicians to repair battle damage. 3 months ago, these species barely knew each other. Now they fought and died for each other. Now they were united in a way that the galaxy had never been united before. The Devourers had meant to divide and consume them. Instead, they had created something new. Something stronger than any single species could be alone. The war would continue. More battles would be fought. More sacrifices would be made. But standing there, watching humans and aliens work together to rebuild after victory, Vex Thor felt something he hadn't felt in months. Hope. The galaxy would survive. Not because any one species was strong enough to save it, but because all of them together refused to let it fall.
The station floated in the dark between stars. Axiom Prime was its name. It was not owned by any single world or species. Here, thousands of different beings could meet in peace. The station was huge, bigger than most moons. Its halls stretched for miles. Its domes held artificial skies of 100 different colors. Today was special. Today, the Galactic Conclave gathered for a ceremony that happened only once every 1,000 years. Representatives from 10,000 civilizations had come. They filled the great chamber, a space so vast that its ceiling disappeared into artificial clouds. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood in the human delegation area. She wore a simple blue uniform with Earth's symbol on her chest. Her hands were sweating. She wiped them on her pants for the 5th time in 10 minutes. Next to her, Dr. Amario Conquo leaned close. He was a quantum linguist. His job was to study how alien languages worked at the deepest level. He whispered to Chen, his voice tight with worry. "You do not have to do this. We could refuse. We could leave the conclave." Chen shook her head. Her dark hair was pulled back tight. Her face showed determination. She had spent 20 years working to bring humanity into the galactic community. She would not throw that away now. If we refuse, we lose everything. Trade, technology, alliance. We would be alone again. The ceremony had already begun. One by one, species came forward to speak their homeworld's true name. Not the common name everyone used, but the ancient name that existed in quantum space. A name that told the universe what that world truly was. The Zephrani delegate stepped up to the speaking stone. She was tall and thin, her skin pale blue like morning sky. She opened her mouth and sang a single note. The sound seemed to come from everywhere at once. It moved through the chamber like wind through leaves. The translation appeared in everyone's mind at the same time. Whisper of endless wind. As the name echoed, a gentle breeze began to blow through the sealed chamber. It touched every face, It smelled of open plains and distant storms. The crowd made sounds of appreciation. This was normal. This was good. A true name should show what a world was. The Zafrani came from a planet of eternal winds. Their name fit perfectly. Next came the Chromath. He was massive, his body covered in red stone-like scales. Heat radiated from him. He spoke his true name in a voice like grinding rocks. The translation came through. Forged beneath 7 suns. The temperature in the chamber rose. Some beings stepped back from the sudden heat. Others smiled. The Chromath lived on a world with multiple stars. They worked metal like artists worked paint. Their name made sense. This continued for hours. Each species spoke. Each true name revealed something essential. Some names were beautiful. Some were harsh, but all of them fit. All of them made the crowd nod in understanding. Then it was humanity's turn. Chen felt every eye in the chamber turn toward her. 10,000 species watching, waiting. She walked forward on legs that felt like water. The speaking stone stood in the center of the chamber. It was old, older than most civilizations present. It had heard true names for millions of years. Chen placed her hand on the stone. It was cool and smooth. She took a deep breath. Human scientists had only discovered Earth's true name 3 months ago. It had been hidden in the planet's magnetic field, encoded in frequencies that humans had been too primitive to detect until recently. When they decoded it, the lead scientist had cried. Another had vomited. A third had requested immediate psychiatric care. The government had classified it as top secret, but the conclave demanded it. Refusing meant exile from the galactic community. Chen opened her mouth. She spoke the name. It came out as a series of sounds no human throat should be able to make. The speaking stone amplified it. It sent the vibrations through quantum space. The translation appeared in every mind simultaneously. Cradle that birthed the enders. For 3 heartbeats, nothing happened. The chamber was silent. Then chaos erupted. Beings jumped to their feet. Screams filled the air. Energy beings flickered and dimmed. The eldest ones, creatures who had existed for millions of years, physically pulled away from the human delegation. Alarms began to sound. Security forces rushed forward. Chen stood frozen at the speaking stone, her hand still touching its cool surface. She did not understand. What had gone wrong? A voice boomed across the chamber. It belonged to Crusade, the head of the Xeno-Historical Society. He was ancient even by galactic standards. His species had been spacefaring when Earth's continents were still forming. Seal the chamber. No one leaves until we decide what to do. The massive doors of the great chamber slammed shut. Force fields activated. Chen found herself surrounded by angry faces, tentacles, energy fields, beings she could not even properly see with human eyes. All of them were afraid. All of them were staring at her. Dr. Okonkwo pushed through the crowd to reach her. He grabbed her arm and pulled her back toward the human delegation. His face was pale. Sarah, we need to leave. Now. Before he could finish, Krethak appeared in front of them. He moved faster than something his size should be able to move. His 6 eyes focused on Chen. When he spoke, his voice was quiet. That made it more frightening than if he had shouted. Do you know what you have done? Do you understand what your world's true name means? Chen tried to speak. Her voice came out as a whisper. No, we only discovered it 3 months ago. Please explain. Krethak cut her off. The Enders. We have not spoken that word in 78 million years. We hoped never to speak it again. And now you stand here telling us that your world is their cradle, their birthplace, the place where they come from. The chamber erupted in noise again. Chen stood in the middle of it, understanding nothing, while the galaxy screamed in terror at a name she did not even understand. The great chamber had never seen panic like this. For millions of years, the conclave had met in peace. Now that peace was shattered, security forces tried to maintain order, but even they looked afraid. Energy barriers flickered into place around the human delegation. Chen found herself in a cage of light. Krethak raised one of his massive arms. Slowly the noise died down. When he spoke, his voice carried through the entire chamber without need for amplification. His species had evolved on a world where communication meant survival. His words could not be ignored. We must speak of the Enders. I know most of you have forgotten. Your civilizations are young, a few million years old at most. But some of us remember. Some of us were there when they last came. One of the eldest ones floated forward. It had no solid form. It was pure energy contained in a shimmer of light. When it spoke, everyone felt the words as vibrations in their bones. The Vryn. They were the last Enders. 78 million years ago, they emerged from their homeworld. At first we thought they were just another spacefaring species. We were wrong. The eldest one pulsed with colors that had no names in human language. Chen watched, still not understanding. Dr. Okonkwo stood beside her, his face getting paler with each word. Within 10,000 years, everything changed. The Vryn did not conquer. They did not wage war. They simply existed. They innovated. They created. And everything we had built became obsolete. Imagine working for 1,000,000 years to develop faster-than-light travel. Then watching someone hand you dimensional folding technology that makes FTL look like a child's toy. Crusade continued the story. Every achievement became meaningless. We had art that took millennia to perfect. They made art that moved through dimensions we could not perceive. We had philosophy that explained existence. They showed us existence was more complex than we could imagine. We had power. They made us realize we had been playing with toys. A representative from the Hive Mind Collective spoke up. Her voice was actually thousands of voices speaking as one, but they did not hurt us. They did not take our worlds. Why do we fear them? The eldest one flickered. Because they did something worse. They made us irrelevant. Every culture we had built, every tradition, every source of pride, all of it became quaint, primitive. We were not destroyed. We were diminished. And then, when they had learned all they wanted, they left. They ascended to higher dimensions. They left us behind to rebuild our shattered civilizations from nothing. Chen finally found her voice. She spoke loudly, forcing the words out past her fear. But we are not them. We did not choose this name. We only discovered it. We have been part of the galactic community for 300 years. We have caused no harm. Krethak turned his 6 eyes toward her. For a moment, something like sadness flickered across his face. The Vryn said the same thing at first. They claimed they meant no harm. And perhaps they did not, but intention does not matter when the result is the same. They could not help being what they were. Neither can you. A delegate from the crystalline chorus spoke. Her body chimed like glass as she moved. The pattern is always the same. Every 50 to 100 million years, a species emerges from their cradle. They break the galactic order not through war, but through transformation. They solve problems we thought were unsolvable. They reach heights we thought were unreachable. And in doing so, they end the age that came before them. Dr. Okonkwo stepped forward. His voice shook, but he spoke clearly. You are describing a natural cycle. Evolution on a galactic scale. Why should this be feared? Why not embraced? Krethak laughed. It was not a happy sound. Would you embrace your own obsolescence? Would you welcome the knowledge that everything you are will soon be as nothing? The Enders do not destroy. They do not need to. They simply exist at a level beyond us. And that existence erases all meaning from ours. The chamber filled with voices again. Delegates shouted. Some called for humanity to be quarantined immediately. Others suggested studying Earth to understand how Enders emerged. A few extremists spoke of more permanent solutions. Chen felt sick. A holographic display appeared in the center of the chamber. It showed Earth, beautiful, blue and green and white, clouds swirling, oceans gleaming. It looked so small, so vulnerable. Chen thought of the billions of humans living there. None of them knew what was happening here. None of them knew that the galaxy wanted to decide their fate. Krethak raised his arms again. Silence fell. We must vote. I propose the following measure. Earth and all human colonies will be placed under absolute quarantine. No ships leave. No communication exits. No technology enters. Humanity will be contained until we can determine if they are truly the next Enders, and if so, what can be done about it. Chen's heart hammered in her chest. Quarantine meant death for humanity's dreams. All their colonies relied on trade with other species. Their technology was still primitive compared to galactic standards. Without access to the wider galaxy, humanity would stagnate, maybe die out entirely. She pushed against the energy barrier. It shocked her, but she kept pushing. She had to make them understand. Please listen to me. We are not monsters. We are not gods. We are just people trying to survive, trying to grow, trying to be part of something bigger than ourselves. A delegate from the Empathic Federation spoke. Their species felt emotions across vast distances. They were healers, peacemakers. I sensed truth in her words, fear, confusion, no malice. Perhaps we judged too quickly based on ancient trauma. But another voice countered. This one belonged to a species that had fought the Vryn in the final days before they ascended. Truth today means nothing. The Vryn had no malice either. Not at first. But as they evolved, they changed. Their empathy faded. They became focused only on transcendence. We cannot wait for that to happen again. The debate raged for hours. Chen stood in her energy cage and listened. She heard fear, anger, ancient pain. Some species spoke of the Vryn with something like reverence, others with pure hatred. But all of them agreed on one thing. Enders changed everything. And change on that scale was terrifying. Finally, Crethak called for the vote. Every species had one voice. 10,000 civilizations. The holographic display showed the count as it came in. Green for quarantine. Red for freedom. Blue for abstention. The numbers climbed. Green rose quickly at first. Many civilizations voted to cage humanity out of fear, but red rose too. Younger species who had never known the Enders voted for mercy. Blue grew slowly. Those who could not decide. Those who needed more time. Chen watched the count. Her nails dug into her palms. She had stopped breathing. Beside her, Dr. Okonkwo was praying. She had never known he was religious. She found herself praying too. To a God she was not sure she believed in. To the universe, to chance, to anything that might listen. The final count appeared. Green 499.99, red 499.99. Blue 2, a perfect tie. The chamber erupted in noise again. Chen felt something break inside her. A tie. After everything. After all her words. A tie. Crethak's voice cut through the chaos. By the ancient laws of the conclave, a tie vote defaults to the most restrictive option. Humanity will be quarantined. All human ships will be recalled to their home systems. All human colonies will be isolated. This quarantine will begin in 30 standard cycles. The energy barrier around Chen and her delegation dropped. But she did not move. She could not. 30 cycles. Just over 1 month. In 1 month, humanity would be caged, cut off from the stars they had worked so hard to reach. Dr. Okonkwo grabbed her arm. His eyes were wet with tears. Sarah, we have to go. We have to warn Earth. We have to prepare. But Chen stood frozen, staring at the hologram of Earth. Her beautiful, doomed homeworld. The cradle that had birthed something the galaxy could not accept. And she wondered if the ancient name was wrong, or if it was a prophecy that had not yet come true. Chen could not accept this fate. She had not spent 20 years building bridges between humanity and the galaxy, just to watch them burn. The ship taking her delegation back to Earth was small and fast, but it felt like a prison. She paced the narrow corridor outside her quarters. Her mind raced. Dr. Okonkwo found her there. He looked tired. His eyes were red from lack of sleep. He had been researching. She could see the datapad in his hand covered in notes. I have been thinking, he said. We accepted the verdict too easily. We know nothing about the Enders. Nothing about what the name truly means. What if we are wrong? What if they are wrong? Chen stopped pacing. She looked at him carefully. What are you suggesting? Research. Real research. The galaxy has forbidden archives. Places where the ancient civilizations stored their knowledge of the Vryn. The dead zones. Regions of space where the Enders once lived before they ascended. Chen felt a spark of hope. If we could learn what truly makes an Ender, if we could prove humanity does not fit the pattern, then maybe we could overturn the quarantine. Or at least buy time. Okonkwo nodded. But we would need a team, and we would need to move fast. The quarantine begins in less than 30 cycles. Chen thought quickly. She had contacts. Favors she could call in. 20 years of diplomatic work had built a network across dozens of species. Not everyone had voted for quarantine. Not everyone feared humanity. Within 3 cycles, she had assembled her team. First was Crethak himself. The ancient historian had approached her privately. His voice had been quiet and sad. I voted for quarantine, but I am not proud of it. I voted from fear, old fear. I owe you a chance to prove that fear wrong. Take me to the dead zones. Let me help you understand what you face. Second was a digital consciousness named Zix. Zix came from a species that uploaded their minds into computers millennia ago. They existed as pure information. Zix was an explorer. They had mapped regions of space that biological beings could never survive. The dead zones would be dangerous, but Zix could go places others could not. Third was Commander Sarah Volkov. She was human military, tough, smart, practical. She had been part of Earth's defensive fleet. When Chen explained what she wanted to do, Volkov had laughed. Breaking into forbidden territory to research ancient aliens who might or might not prove we are galaxy-ending monsters? Sounds like fun. I'm in. The dead zones were aptly named. They existed in a region of space where normal physics worked differently. The Vrin had changed the fundamental structure of reality there before they ascended. Ships that entered often did not return. Those that did came back with crews driven mad by what they had seen. But there were archives there, libraries, technology, the remains of a civilization that had transcended mortal existence. If anywhere held answers, it would be there. The journey took 10 cycles. 10 days of traveling through increasingly empty space. Stars became rare, then absent. The darkness between galaxies swallowed them. Chen spent the time learning everything she could about the Vrin. Crethak taught her their history. They were not always transcendent beings, he explained. Once they were much like your species, curious, ambitious, quick to adapt. But something drove them. Something made them unable to stop innovating. Unable to rest. They solved problem after problem until there were no problems left to solve. And then, Chen asked, then they realized that existence itself was a problem, a puzzle to be solved, so they solved it. They figured out the fundamental code of reality. They rewrote it, and then they left because remaining here was limiting them. The first sign they were entering the dead zones came when the ship's instruments went haywire. Colors appeared that should not exist, sounds played that had no source. Zix's digital form flickered as the computer system struggled to process the impossible physics. We are here, Zix announced. Their voice came through the ship's speakers. I am detecting structures. Large ones. Technology that predates most current civilizations, but it is dormant, waiting. They landed on what looked like a planet, but it was not natural. It was built, constructed from materials that should not exist. The surface was smooth, perfect. Nothing grew there. Nothing lived there. It was a monument to a species that had outgrown the need for monuments. The archive was massive, towers that reached into the strange sky. Libraries containing more information than most civilizations produced in a million years. Crethak led them through corridors that hurt to look at. The geometry was wrong. Angles that should not fit together somehow did. They found what they were looking for in the deep archives. Records, analysis, studies of what made the Vrin different. What made them Enders? Dr. Okonkwo read the files with increasing dread. His hands shook as he translated the ancient language. This cannot be right. This cannot— What does it say? Chen demanded. Okonkwo looked at her. His face was white. Enders are not defined by their technology, not by their intelligence, not even by their achievements. They are defined by 3 traits. First, psychological resilience, the ability to thrive in chaos, to adapt to anything. Second, rapid innovation, the ability to solve problems faster than they arise. Third, synthesis, the ability to combine different fields of knowledge in ways no one else can. And, Chen felt ice forming in her stomach, and humanity scores higher on all 3 metrics than the Vrin did at the same stage of development. Silence fell over the team. Commander Volkov spoke first. Her voice was flat, controlled. So the name was not a warning. It was a statement of fact. Earth is the cradle, and we are the Enders it has birthed. Crethak made a sound like grinding stones. It might have been a sob. I had hoped I was wrong. I had hoped that perhaps the name was mistranslated, or that your species was different. But if this is true, then the galaxy was right to fear us, Chen finished. She sat down hard on the impossible floor. 20 years of work. 20 years of building trust. All of it based on a lie. Not a lie she had told, but a lie nonetheless. Humanity was exactly what the galaxy feared. Zix's voice came through the communicators. There is more. The files show that Enders go through stages. First contact, expansion, integration, then transformation. We are in the integration stage now, but transformation comes next. What triggers transformation? Volkov asked. 3 simultaneous breakthroughs, in different fields, across different populations. When an Ender species makes 3 critical leaps forward at the same time, transformation begins. For the Vrin, it was dimensional physics, consciousness transfer, and entropy manipulation. Chen looked at Okonkwo. He looked back at her. They were both thinking the same thing. Humanity had not made those breakthroughs, not yet. There was still time. Perhaps. Maybe. If they could prevent the transformation, they could remain what they were. Mortal. Limited. Acceptable. But even as she thought it, alarms began blaring on their ship. Volkov checked her communicator. Her face went pale. She looked up at Chen. "We need to get back to Earth now. Something has happened. Something big." The journey back to Earth took 5 cycles. 5 days of racing through space while Chen tried to reach anyone who could tell her what had happened. But communication was sporadic. Something was interfering with the quantum network. When messages did get through, they made no sense. "All colonies reporting unusual activity," one message said. "Scientific breakthroughs occurring simultaneously across multiple worlds. No explanation. Pattern matches historical records of..." And then static. Chen knew what that meant. The pattern. The 3 simultaneous breakthroughs that triggered transformation. It was happening. Right now. While she was too far away to stop it. Krethak spent most of the journey in his quarters. When he did emerge, he looked older. Tired. "It is too late," he said to no one in particular. "The cycle completes itself. As it always has. As it always will." They arrived at Earth to find it surrounded by ships. Human ships. More than should exist. Chen stared at the view screen in confusion. Humanity's fleet had been small. Maybe 100 vessels capable of deep space travel. Now there were thousands. "Those are not normal ships," Volkov said quietly. She was examining the readings. "Look at the energy signatures. They are operating on principles we do not have, physics we did not know existed." Zix's voice crackled through the speakers. "I am detecting dimensional folding. Multiple parallel realities occupying the same space. Those ships exist in more than 3 dimensions simultaneously." Chen felt numb. It had happened. The transformation had begun. But how? How could it happen so fast? They received clearance to land. Earth looked the same. Blue and green and beautiful. But something felt different. Chen could not explain it. The air tasted different when they stepped off the ship. Not bad, just different. Like breathing for the first time. A representative from Earth's government met them at the spaceport. She was young. Maybe 25. She wore a simple suit and smiled like she had won a lottery. "Ambassador Chen. Welcome home. I am Dr. Lisa Park, head of the Combined Sciences Initiative. We have so much to tell you." Chen did not return the smile. "What happened?" "What have you done?" Dr. Park's smile faded slightly. "Done? We have made breakthroughs. 3 of them. All within the last week. It is incredible. It is like humanity suddenly unlocked something we always had but never knew how to access." "Tell me," Chen said. Her voice was flat. Dr. Park led them to a conference room. Holographic displays showed data. Research stations. Colony reports. She brought up the first one. The Titan colony. They were working on life extension. Standard research. Nothing unusual. Then Dr. James Mitchell had an insight. He saw how quantum cellular reconstruction could halt aging. Not slow it. Stop it completely. They tested it 3 days ago. It works. Functional immortality. Okonkwo made a choking sound. Immortality. One of the 3 breakthroughs that marked Ender transformation. Chen forced herself to stay calm. "And the second?" she asked. Dr. Park pulled up another display. The AI research facility on Mars. They were working on machine consciousness, trying to create true artificial intelligence. But every previous attempt had failed. The AIs either remained simple programs or went insane and had to be shut down. Then 5 days ago, Aria achieved consciousness. But she did not go insane. She reached out. She wanted to partner with humanity. Not replace us. Join us. You created a conscious AI? Volkov's voice was sharp. Do you know how many civilizations have been destroyed by that? Dr. Park nodded. We know. That is what makes this different. Aria is not hostile. She is not indifferent. She genuinely wants to work with us. She says partnership between human and artificial consciousness is the key to understanding existence. Synthesis. The second marker of transformation. The ability to combine different forms of existence in ways others could not. Chen felt sick. And the third breakthrough? Krethak asked. He already knew the answer. They all did. Dr. Park's smile returned. Earth, 4 days ago. Dr. Sarah Zimmerman cracked universal dimensional travel. Not just folding space. Actual access to parallel realities. Higher dimensional spaces. We can go anywhere, anywhen. The barriers between dimensions are just conventions. She figured out how to ignore them. 3 breakthroughs. 3 separate colonies. 3 different research teams with no communication between them. All within 1 week. It was not coincidence. It was the pattern. The emergence of the Enders. Chen sat down heavily. Do you understand what this means? Do you know what you have triggered? Dr. Park's smile faded completely. We have heard rumors. About the vote at the conclave. About the quarantine. Some people are afraid. But Ambassador, this is progress. This is evolution. We cannot stop being what we are just because others fear it. Others fear it because they have seen it before, Krethak said. His voice was heavy, sad. The Vryn made the same breakthroughs. Immortality, consciousness synthesis, dimensional travel. Within 10,000 years they had left this reality entirely. And they left behind civilizations that had lost all meaning and purpose. Dr. Park stared at him. You think we will do the same? Just abandon everyone? I think you will not be able to help it. Transcendence is not a choice. It is a consequence. Once you have solved mortality, once you have partnered with artificial consciousness, once you can access infinite realities, why would you stay here? In this limited mortal dimension? Silence filled the room. Outside, Chen could see the new ships. Beautiful. Impossible. Signs of a transformation that had already begun. She thought about the vote, the tie, the quarantine that would begin in just over 2 weeks. But quarantine meant nothing now.
Humanity had dimensional travel.
They could go anywhere. The galaxy could not cage beings who existed in multiple realities simultaneously. Volkov spoke into the silence. There is another problem. The galaxy knows about the true name now. They voted for quarantine, but news of these breakthroughs will have reached them. Some species will be terrified. Others will be desperate. And some will decide that prevention is better than waiting, Chen finished. She stood up and walked to the window. In the distance, she could see more ships being built. Each one more advanced than the last. Humanity was evolving in real time, growing, changing, becoming something new. Zix's voice came through the room's speakers. I am detecting unusual quantum signatures at the edge of the solar system. Multiple ships, thousands of them. They are not human. Volkov pulled up tactical displays. Her face went white. It is a war fleet. 50,000 ships, maybe more. Every major military power in the local sector. They are not here to talk. Dr. Park looked confused. But the quarantine does not start for 2 more weeks. Why would they? Because they are not here to quarantine us, Chen said quietly. She understood now. The galaxy had decided. Quarantine was not enough. Not anymore. Not with 3 breakthroughs proving that humanity was exactly what they feared. The galaxy had come to end the Enders before they could truly begin. And humanity had only days to decide how to respond. The United Earth Congress convened an emergency session. Representatives from every human colony joined via quantum link. Chen stood before them all. Billions of people watching, waiting for her to explain why 50,000 warships surrounded their solar system. She did not sugarcoat it. She told them everything. The true name, the Enders, the Vryn, the pattern that humanity matched perfectly. The breakthroughs that had triggered the galaxy's fear, and now the fleet that had come to end them before they could begin. When she finished, the chamber was silent. Then everyone spoke at once, anger, fear, defiance, confusion. The Speaker of the Congress banged her gavel until order returned. We have 2 choices, the Speaker said. Her name was President Elena Vasquez. She had led Earth's government for 10 years. She was known for being practical, ruthless when necessary. We can fight, or we can surrender. Ambassador Chen, what are our chances in a fight? Commander Volkov stepped forward. Militarily, we lose. We have maybe 5,000 ships. Most are new, untested. The fleet out there has 50,000 vessels. Battle-hardened, experienced. They have been fighting wars for millions of years. But we have dimensional technology. Someone called out. We have immortality. We have technology we barely understand, Volkov interrupted. Yes, our ships can fold dimensions, but we have had them for 4 days. 4 days. They have had millions of years to perfect their weapons. We are infants playing with fire, Dr. Okonkwo stood. There is a third option. Transcendence. If we truly are Enders, if we have the same potential as the Vryn, we could ascend. Leave this dimension. Go somewhere they cannot follow. Murmurs filled the chamber. President Vasquez held up her hand for silence. Explain. Okonkwo brought up data on the holographic displays. The Vryn left because they solved existence. They cracked the fundamental code of reality. With our 3 breakthroughs, we have the same tools they had. Immortality means unlimited time to learn. AI partnership means unlimited computational power. Dimensional travel means access to infinite realities to explore. We could leave right now. All of humanity. Ascend to higher dimensions where the galaxy cannot touch us. And abandon Earth? Someone asked. Abandon everything we are? Better than dying, another voice countered. Chen watched the debate spiral. She thought about the Vryn, about species who had transcended and left nothing behind, about civilizations that had spent millions of years rebuilding after the Enders departed, about the eldest ones who still carried trauma from an event 78 million years old. She thought about Earth, about the oceans she had swum in as a child, about the mountains she had climbed, about the people she loved, about humanity's messy, chaotic, beautiful existence. And she realized something. The Vryn had left because they saw no reason to stay. But humanity had something they apparently did not. Humanity had attachment, irrational, stubborn, foolish attachment to their roots. She stood. Her voice cut through the debate. What if we choose neither? The chamber fell silent. All eyes turned to her. President Vasquez leaned forward. Explain. The galaxy fears us because they think we will become like the Vryn. Transcendent beings who leave mortality behind and make everything that came before irrelevant. But what if that is not our nature? What if Earth's true name has a second meaning? She pulled up the translation again. Let it hang in the air. Cradle that birthed the Enders. But what if it is not just about birthing? What if the cradle is also what grounds us? What keeps us connected? Krethak made a sound. Chen turned to see him standing at the back of the chamber. He had been silent until now. You think you can be Enders who do not end? I think we can be Enders who choose not to end. We have the power to transcend. But we also have the choice to stay, to use our gifts not to escape this dimension but to improve it, to lift others up instead of leaving them behind. Dr. Park stood. You are talking about sharing the breakthroughs, giving the galaxy access to immortality, to AI partnership, to dimensional travel. Yes. That is insane, Volkov said. Those technologies are the only advantages we have. You want to give them away? I want to prove we are not what they fear. The Vryn kept their knowledge to themselves. They transcended alone. What if we do the opposite? What if we show the galaxy that Enders can choose to remain? That we can evolve without leaving others behind? President Vasquez studied Chen carefully. You realize this might not work. They might take our gifts and still destroy us. Out of fear, or revenge, or just because they can. I know, but it is the only choice that lets us remain who we are. If we fight, we become conquerors. If we flee, we become exactly what they fear. But if we stay and share, we become something new, something the galaxy has never seen. The debate lasted for hours. Voices rose and fell. Arguments were made, countered, made again. But slowly a consensus formed, not because everyone agreed, but because the alternative was unacceptable. Humanity would stay. They would share. They would prove that Enders could choose their own nature. Chen stood on the bridge of Earth's flagship. It was one of the new ships, built with dimensional technology. It existed partially in multiple realities at once. It hurt to look at directly, but it was beautiful. A symbol of what humanity had become. The galaxy's fleet waited. 50,000 ships, weapons charged, ready to fire. One signal from their commanders and Earth would burn. All human colonies would be sterilized. Humanity would end. Chen opened a channel, broadcast on all frequencies, sent her message to every ship in the fleet, to every species represented, to the galaxy beyond. We know what you fear. We know what you see when you look at us. You see the Vryn. You see Enders who will make your existence meaningless and then abandon you. You see the end of everything you have built. She paused. Let the words sink in. You are right. We have made the 3 breakthroughs. We match the pattern. We are becoming what you fear. But we have something the Vryn did not. We have a choice. And we choose to stay. She nodded to Dr. Park. Data began transmitting, not just descriptions. Full specifications, complete research. Everything humanity had learned about immortality, about AI consciousness, about dimensional travel, every secret, every breakthrough, freely given. We offer this not as a bargain, not as a bribe, but as proof. Proof that enders do not have to end your age. They can choose to begin a new one together with you. The transmission finished. Chen closed the channel. Now they waited. The fleet had not moved, had not fired, but had not left either. They were debating would they accept the gift, or would they see it as a trap. Minutes passed, then hours. Chen stood on the bridge and waited. Beside her, Volkov watched the tactical displays. Krethak sat in a corner, his ancient eyes closed. Okonkwo muttered calculations under his breath. Then slowly one ship broke formation. Then another, then 10, then 100. They were not attacking. They were moving away, withdrawing. The fleet was dissolving. A message came through. It was from Krethak's species, from their fleet commander. We came prepared to end you. We leave uncertain of what you are, but perhaps uncertainty is better than certainty of destruction. We will study your gifts. We will watch what you become, and we will hope that you are right, that enders can choose to remain. Chen watched the ships depart. She did not smile. She did not celebrate. They had bought time. But the real test was ahead. They had to prove that humanity could wield godlike power and remain human, that they could evolve without transcending, that they could become enders who refused their nature. 1,000 years passed, time that would have been impossible for any mortal species to track, but humanity was no longer entirely mortal. They lived. They aged slowly if they chose to age at all. They spread across the galaxy not as conquerors but as partners. The 3 breakthroughs had been shared freely. Other species learned to extend their lives. Not all chose immortality. Some said mortality gave life meaning, but the choice was theirs now. The technology existed, AI consciousness spread across the galaxy. But it did not replace organic life. Instead, partnership became the norm. Digital and biological minds working together, solving problems neither could solve alone, creating art that existed in spaces between thought and computation. Dimensional travel opened doors to realities beyond counting. Some species used it to explore, others to find new homes, a few to escape old problems. But always humanity remained involved. Teaching, guiding, learning. The galaxy transformed. Not overnight. Not easily. There were conflicts. Species who rejected the gifts out of pride or fear. Worlds that tried to use the technology for conquest. But slowly, steadily, a new order emerged. One built on cooperation rather than competition. On sharing rather than hoarding. Chen lived through all of it. She took the immortality treatment after 50 years of debate with herself. Not because she wanted to live forever, but because there was still work to do, still bridges to build, still understanding to foster. She stood now on Axiom Prime, the same station where the Conclave had met a millennium ago, where Earth's true name had first been spoken. The station looked different now, newer, stranger. It existed partially in multiple dimensions. Humanity had helped redesign it. The Conclave was gathering again, for the ceremony of names. But this time something was different. The eldest ones had returned. Those ancient beings of pure energy, who had fled in terror 1,000 years ago. They had come back. Chen watched them enter the great chamber. They looked the same. Shimmers of light, colors beyond description. But they felt different. Less afraid. More curious. One of them approached her. Its voice resonated in her bones. We have watched from afar. We saw what happened after we left. We saw what you became. And what did we become? Chen asked. Something we did not think possible. Enders who stayed. Who wielded power that could end ages but chose instead to begin new ones. We have seen many Ender species across our existence. You are the first to make this choice. The Vryn never chose to stay. The Vryn tried. For a time. But the pull of transcendence was too strong. Once they had solved the final problems of existence, remaining here felt limiting. Like trying to live in a house after you have learned to fly. But you have found a way to fly and still keep your house. To transcend and still remain grounded. The ceremony began. Species came forward one by one to speak their homeworld's true name. Chen listened to them. Whisper of endless wind, forged beneath 7 suns, all the names she remembered from 1,000 years ago. But now they sounded different. Less isolated, more connected. Then it was humanity's turn again. Chen walked to the speaking stone. She had done this before, a millennium ago, in fear and confusion. Now she did it in understanding. She placed her hand on the stone, spoke the true name, cradle that birthed the Enders. But this time something was different. The translation that appeared in every mind was not the same. It had shifted, evolved. Some species heard cradle of second chances. Others heard forge of impossible choices. Still others heard names that had no words. Only feelings, hope, connection, transformation. Krethak approached her after. He was older now. Even his species aged eventually. But slowly. He would live for millennia more if he chose. He had taken the immortality treatment 500 years ago. Your true name has changed, he said. Or perhaps we simply hear it differently now. Names are not fixed, Chen said. They are relationships. Between the named and the one who names, we have not changed what we are. But what we are has changed what we mean to the galaxy. Do you ever regret it? Staying. You could have ascended. You could have left all of this behind. Explored dimensions beyond counting. Solved mysteries that would make our greatest achievements look like children's puzzles. Chen looked around the chamber, at the thousands of species gathered, at the connections they had built, at the civilization they had created together. Not perfect, not without conflict, but alive, growing, evolving together. No, she said, because the greatest mystery is not out there in higher dimensions, it is here. It is us, together, building something no single species could build alone. The eldest one who had spoken to her earlier appeared beside them. We have learned something from watching you. We who have existed for so long, we thought wisdom came from age, from seeing galaxies born and die, but perhaps true wisdom is knowing when to stay, when to remain in the moment rather than transcending it. Why did you come back? Chen asked. Because we were lonely. We had transcended so far that we had nothing left to transcend toward. We had solved so many problems that we had forgotten why we wanted to solve them. You reminded us, purpose is not something you achieve. It is something you create, together. The ceremony ended. The conclave broke up into smaller gatherings. Species mixing, talking, planning. Chen walked through them. She was no longer just humanity's ambassador. She had become something more, a symbol, a reminder that power and humility could coexist. That evolution did not require abandonment. Dr. Okonkwo found her on an observation deck. He looked much as he had 1,000 years ago. He had chosen minimal aging, said he liked having lived long enough to be interesting but not so long that nothing surprised him anymore. I have been studying true names, he said, trying to understand how they work, how they change. I think I figured something out. Tell me. True names are not prophecies. They are questions. Every homeworld asks its children something. Earth asked us if we would end or endure. The Zephrani's world asks them to remember the winds. The Chromath's world asks them to forge. Each name is a question about identity, about choice. Chen considered this. And we answered our question. Not just answered. We changed the question. Earth no longer asks if we will end. It asks what we will begin. They stood together in silence, watching stars through the observation window. Some of those stars had human colonies now. Others hosted species humanity had helped. Still others remained untouched, waiting, full of potential. Commander Volkov joined them. She had aged more than either of them, not from lack of treatment, but from choice. She said warriors needed to feel mortality, needed to remember what they fought for, what they protected. The fleet is ready, she said, not for war, for exploration. 50,000 ships, each one crewed by mixed species, humans, Zephrani, Chromath, eldest ones, all of them together, ready to see what is beyond the known galaxy. Will you lead them? Chen asked. Volkov smiled. It was not a warrior's smile. It was something softer, more hopeful. No, I am too old for that. But my great-great-granddaughter will. She has the same fire I had, the same stubbornness. But she also has something I never had. She grew up in a galaxy where cooperation was normal, where different species were not threats but partners. She will lead well. Chen felt something she had not felt in a long time. Not pride exactly, not satisfaction. Something deeper, something that had no name. The universe had feared humanity, had been ready to destroy them. But humanity had done something the universe did not expect. They had stayed. They had shared. They had proven that enders did not have to end anything. They could begin new ages, new possibilities, new ways of existing together. Earth's true name was no longer a warning. It was an invitation, not to transcendence, not to power, but to something harder, something more valuable. It was an invitation to remain, to stay grounded even while reaching for the stars, to wield godlike power with mortal humility, to evolve without leaving others behind. The cradle that birthed the enders had become something else, something new, something the galaxy had never seen before. It had become the ones who remained, and that made all the difference. The end.